Hey Raghunath, tell everyone about our Patreon community.
Sure, Kastuba. The Wisdom of the Sages Patreon community is an incredible online yoga resource. If you like the type of yoga wisdom and culture we share on the show, then our Patreon community is a great next step. This is a listener-supported podcast, and any level of sponsorship will unlock a wide range of live and archived classes, talks, and even workshops.
Raghunath teaches, I teach, and we have a host of other excellent teachers on topics ranging from yoga philosophy, asana classes, storytelling, Ayurveda, kirtan, cooking, meditation, and a lot more.
We even have an incredible online Bhakti 12-step recovery group.
So if you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/wisdom of the sages.
All right, let's get it on.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Super Soul Farm, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host, Raghunath, and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York, Kastuba Das. Welcome to the show, everybody. Welcome to Super Soul Farm. It's a good morning. It's a good morning today, Kastuba. Do you know that?
Sure, why not?
Today is the first day of the rest of your life.
Okay. Accept that. I can't really argue with that.
Yep. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Mara's a little under the weather. Can you see?
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah. She's all right. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Srimad Bhagavatam, our study, our discussion of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Yeah. And we are in a beautiful place, actually. Canto 5, talking about Jada Bharata, and he's about to give some serious instructions to a king. Before we go anywhere there today, we've got a few announcements and a little nugget for today. And Mara.
We have an asana class this morning at 10 a.m. with Radhadasi for our Patreon members. Bhakti recovery group meetings today. The men meet at noon and the women meet at 2. And then Lisa Bermudez is offering a essential oils and the 7 chakras workshop today at noon, also for our Patreon members.
I gotta close up my throat chakra. It's too open today. You know what? I wish I had a Vedic skill. Like I wish I played the sitar. Wouldn't that be great?
Sure, why not? I mean,
yeah, a real Vedic skill. It's like I talk about my whole life is Vedic this, Vedic that. I don't have any Vedic skills. I want one good Vedic skill before I die.
All right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, maybe learn to make chapatis or something like that.
Guess what? Well, I can make chapatis. I guess that's a Vedic skill, but but you know, my son, my 9-year-old now is getting really into Mridanga.
Oh, nice.
He's turning lessons. He knows the mantras. He's into it. And you know what he said? It was so sweet. Our Zoomer, Patrick Heffernan will like to hear this. He said, Dad, when's Patrick and Ian coming over next? Because they always come over on Thursday night and we just have a little kirtan. When's Patrick and Ian coming over next? I was like, I don't know, maybe Thursday. He goes, because maybe I could just play Mridanga with you guys and I can show them how I play Mridanga to the kirtan. It's amazing. You teach a kid Mridanga, they just want to be part of kirtan.
This is a kid that just want to punch me in the head all the time.
Yeah, that's all he wanted to do is punch, headbutt. Now he wants to play in kirtan. And he's getting, and he brings his ego into it. He gets a little proud, and that's okay. Yeah, that's okay. Fine. That gets cleansed away.
Yeah.
I'm so happy.
I'm happy for you and him.
Yeah. I tell you, it's interesting, Kastuba. You get sucked into the kid thing. You can't help it. They look like you. They speak with broken language. They're sweet. They're so needy. They think you're a god, a little child, a little child. To them, you are a god. You know what I mean? You get sucked into that attachment, and then they slowly pull away and break the attachment. It's like such a mousetrap.
But it's meant to illustrate something. You know, it's funny that you mentioned that you even use that language. because maybe we'll get to it today. Let's see. But
You think it's funny? You don't think it's a Christian miracle?
What are you talking about?
Say that you think it's funny, but what you mean to say is it's mystical that you said that.
Okay, mystical.
Let's say
Because
mystical.
actually it was yesterday that we read, it was talking about King Rahugana, right? He's up there on that palanquin riding high,
Right.
and it's being carried by these different men, and one of them is Jada Bharata, who's appears like a big, strong dullard. But he's just, even though he's got the king up there, right? Like, this is the king.
Hmm.
He's avoiding the ants, you know, as he walks, and he's carrying the palanquin, and he's avoiding the ant, and it's making the ride real bumpy for the king.
Hmm.
In his mind, the king is a soul, the ant is a soul, right? It's like, whereas most people think, oh, the king is so important, the ant doesn't mean anything.
Ant is so important.
He's saying ant and king are the same. There's a soul in each one. And but it mentions there, when it talks about King Rahugana, it says Naradeva Abhimanam. Naradeva. Abhiman. The Abhiman means like your sense of identity, you know, that in your mind, how you think of yourself, right? And Naradeva means, Nara means like human, Deva means God. So he was the king. He was thinking himself, I'm the king. I'm the God amongst men, right? Just like a father might think to their child, I'm the God for my child.
Right. And that, so the you know, the Bhagavatam gives all these warnings about household life. And you think, well, what's the danger? I'm loving my children. The danger is the knot, like Brooke wrote on the board, they break the attachment and your heart about children. They break your attachment in the heart. What they do break is that if you're doing it right, they break the knot in the heart. There's a knot in the heart that is tying us to this body. And when we can take this information that we're hearing and learn, and because stupid man, what you said the other day has stuck with me so true, especially in this stage of my life. Because as kids become teenagers, they are less attached. And they're just sort of like, you can see how precarious this situation is, how they can just be like, at any minute turn away and go their own way, or get into wicked trouble. You know, little kid gets into some trouble. Teenagers, they can get into wicked trouble quick. You know, and so it's one of these things. It's like everything becomes more and more delicate, and then you start to notice where your heart is at. And then we had this thing. We were talking about the small L love and the big L love, and how actually our love is meant not that we will like take birth again with our family. And a lot of religions talk like this. I want to go to heaven and be with all my kids and my family. And there's my grandfather. He's been waiting for me. And, you know, there's my dog from childhood. No. There's a big, big, big love that I have for everyone, because everyone is actually connected to me. And in this body, it appears like, you know, Mara's my friend, and Rocco's my kid, and Tarun's my kid. And that's it appears like there's a more intimate connection, but in the big scope of things, hey, these people we're attached to, we're all changing partners, right? We're all splitting, we're all rejoining, maybe 3 lifetimes from now.
You're thinking like Prabhupada. I don't know if we're going to get to it today, because Prabhupada in these, what's going to happen now is in these verses, the king is speaking in the sarcastic tone to Jada Bharata. Oh, you know, you've been working really. They just got started on the thing. It's like, you've been going for so long. You must be really tired. And oh, look, you're like an old, frail, skinny little guy, and you know, he's a big, strong guy. But what Jada Bharata, he's going to throw. There's a conventional way that we speak in this world, and in that sense, we speak like in the conventional sense, you're the father of your son. But on another level, you're not. You're two souls that are temporarily taking on these different roles. You know, so we need to learn to think. We operate in this world on the conventional level. We take our roles, we hold on to them, but we have to be able to think on that transcendental level, on that, you know, beyond convention. And so the responses from Jada Bharata to the king are going to challenge us. It's going to remind us to think beyond that convention.
Ooh, yeah, you got to keep that information like in your hand at all time, and you got to be ready to just pull it out when you need it.
You got to be meditating on it all the time, and thinking that way within. And as we get older and older and older, and we can let go of our social roles, like you right now, you have to be the father for your 9-year-old.
I mean, the thing is, you get that anyway.
But
you
when
get it anyway.
But when he's 30, you won't have to be the father for him in that sense. He's going to be able to take care of himself. You're able to let go of that conventional role and think more and more and operate more and more beyond the convention on the spiritual level.
And you really think like, well, I'm going to steer them. I'm going to lead them. I'm going to make them. I'm going to mold them. And the thing is, when they do become 30, you realize, actually, this person is very spiritual, much more spiritual than me, or this person is so materialistic and so out to lunch, and they're nothing like me. And I tried to give, and then you realize, like, you had actually very little control here. You had some help. You could help in some way, but they already have their own, like, spiritual adhikari, their qualification. They're brought in from a previous life. Their attraction to spiritual topics has already been determined by their choices in a previous life. We can assist them. And especially because we're the dominant figure in their life, the dominant educator in their life, we can assist them and lead them. But they have something they've been cultivating for lifetimes that they've entered into your life with. And in the same way, I may not really be able to relate to my brothers or sisters very well. I go home on Christmas and we can't really talk about that. We don't have that much in common. It might be like that once they hit puberty, once they develop their own sense of self in this world, the children, like, wait a second, we actually have very little in common. Or, wow, we've been kindred spirits from from many, many lifetimes. I'm not saying be a pessimist about material relationships, but I do find that Krishna sends me people to lift me. And then Krishna sends me people just to take care of for some time. That I have that aren't meant, they're not meant to travel the whole path with you. And that could be a blood. I'm getting this realization that could be a blood relative. I lose nothing in the exchange unless I'm selfish in my love. I'm just here to love. If I'm looking for some transactional love, then I lose. Oh man, I didn't get the amount of love I put in. What kind of return on investment was that? Right. There is a return on investment if I'm loving cleanly and purely. Because I'm doing it for me. What do you think?
Always. Let me see. I wanted to pull some because I said you were talking like Prabhupada. Prabhupada,
tell me how wise I am.
You are so wise. Here it is. I'll just read it right now. This is the commentary to, we may get to, we may not. The way we're going right now, we probably won't. But this is 5, 10, 12. And this is what Prabhupada writes in the commentary. Maybe we'll read it again when we get there. He says, it is said in Srimad Bhagavatam, Aham Mameti, one thinks, I am this body, and in this body relationship, he is my master, he is my servant, she is my wife, and he is my son.
Right, that's standard.
All these conceptions. Now, Prabhupada's trying to get us to think beyond the conventional, right?
This is in today's purport?
If we get there, it's text 12. We could get there.
Amazing. This is exactly what I'm talking about now.
Well, we're going to, you see, that's not Krishna Miracle because we're talking in relation to what we're going to be reading. So it doesn't make sense that these things coincide.
This came out of the blue for me.
Okay. You don't understand how I'm directing things, Raghunath. You see? You don't understand. I'm pushing. I'm sending you in a particular direction consciously here. Okay, he says this. He says all these conceptions are temporary due to the inevitable change of body and the arrangement of material nature. Tarun is your son right now. At a certain point, material nature is going to change that, right? We are gathered together like straws floating in waves on an ocean. Straws that are inevitably separated by the laws of the waves.
All right, yeah. So think about that. If you just stare at a creek, sometimes a leaf gets sucked down the creek, and then it meets with a very light twig or stick or straw. They join together. They travel. They bump. They hit a rock. They go over a cascade. They split apart. They join with other sticks, and right. You think, right. Here's my true love. We know that's not true.
Okay, then Prabhupada continues.
My soulmate.
He says, in this material world, everyone is floating on the waves of the oceans of nescience, right? Thinking I am this body, this is my son, this is my wife. That we're floating on.
I tell you, you're destroying Hollywood right here, Kostuba. These statements are destroying the Hollywood love. And I do believe there can be people we are so attached to that we are traveling with them. Even the yogis say 7 births. If you're like have a serious like soulmate, she's my soulmate. 7 years you could travel.
Is that authorized? Where does that come from?
That's authorized, my friend.
Where is it from? You find it for me. You find it.
It's there.
You quoted it.
I'm
you
pointing
find
you
it.
in the direction. Now you find it.
You find it. All right. Now we're gonna. There's so much. And you said that I said something that stuck with you. You said something that stuck with me.
You said something that I said something.
Yeah. You said something that stuck with me. All right. And this wasn't on the show, but we were talking about like when we speak publicly about bhakti, and we notice it seems like some people when they're doing it, they try to present the esoteric side because they think it's so beautiful that people are going to catch on to it. And it's not that may never happen, but in general, that's not how it works, right? In general, that esoteric stuff is too esoteric. It just sounds like fantasy. It sounds like Disney. They can't. They can't. You said really to connect with people and to help them understand what you need to do is explain that you're not your body in 1,000 different ways.
Do
you remember saying that?
Time ago. Yeah.
Yeah. That's
explain
me.
in 1,000 different ways. We have to really think about it like that.
And that's what Bhagavatam is going to do, and it's going to do it in such a great way in the chapter that we're reading right now. But in order to lead into it, we've got a nugget that is on this level. And why don't you read the nugget?
I got a nugget on this level. Here's today's little nugget. If you're unfamiliar with a nugget, it's a little piece of wisdom.
It's a poem. Today it's a poem.
It's a wisdom poem. It's from Ella Wheeler Wilcox. Do you know who she is, Mara?
Did you study Ella Wheeler Wilcox in your school?
In your studies? In your private school studies? Your boarding school?
Okay.
The Mean Girls.
Ella Wheeler Wilcox. I think you should have been studying Ella Wheeler Wilcox.
Hell?
What's that?
Was that a hat or her hair?
Oh, you're looking at her?
It was a hat. Forget it. We were looking at pictures of Ella Wheeler.
Yeah. She was an American author and poet. She was born in 1850. She passed away in 1919.
There were really spiritual people back then. They're all started getting into Eastern thought.
Well, I'm impressed with this Ella Wheeler Wilcox because she's born up in like Wisconsin in 1850. Okay.
Well, we've got some people from Wisconsin here.
And she's writing poetry at the age of 8.
Oh, really?
And she's getting like published at like the age of 11 or something like that. And then she moves to New York and marries some guy, and she gets into like all the spiritual stuff. Like that's not too many people were doing that impressive. Back then. I think she was adventurous, And she got into like the Rosicrucians, and she got into Madame Blavatsky and the Theosophists, and that means when you get into that stuff, you're reading Upanishads and you're reading Bhagavad Gita, and you're getting into all that,
Mm-hmm.
So
it was a trend among the upper class people to get into yoga. Look, this is like in the late 1800s, in the 1920s, and stuff like that. Did you know that there was a huge yoga ashram in Nyack, New York?
I don't think it was huge.
It was huge. It was sort of
getting carried away.
Relative to your apartment, it was massive.
Okay. so anyway,
it was a very trendy thing.
I think it was, but even then, Raghunath, I think it was very rare. Very rare. So I'm
it was a little more exclusive.
It was exclusive, yeah. So her works include collections of poems of passion, the collection called Poems of Passion, and the poem Solitude, which contains the famous lines, laugh and the world laughs with you, weep and you weep alone.
We need some poems from Madame Blavatsky. She's an interesting one.
Okay, let's try to stay focused. Put your phone down, Raghunath. I don't like talking to you when you got that phone in your hand. There, could you take that phone away from him?
For the show.
Take that away from him. Thank you. Okay, let's.
I'm just saying she was inspired by Madame Blavatsky. Maybe we should do a little piece on Madame Blavatsky.
We could do all kinds of stuff on Madame Blavatsky, but one thing at a time. Let's deal with Ella Wheeler Wilcox right now. What's she got to say? This is from the poem called Affirm.
Affirm the body, beautiful and whole, the earth expression of the immortal soul.
Even that is.
Affirm the mind, the messenger of the hour, to speed between thee and the source of power. Affirm the spirit, the eternal I. Of this great Trinity, no part deny.
No part deny. We're gonna.
That was like, we're not the body, we're not the mind, we're something divine, circa 1890,
It's true.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's great. It's like affirm the body, beautiful and whole. She calls it the earth expression of the immortal soul. Because we see, we take on a form that has eyes. Because the soul sees, right? Because the soul hears, we take on a form that has ears, right? It's an earthly expression of, just like if you play a video game, you get a little figure in there that's got arms and legs and eyes, and a little Mario or whatever it is, playing in that game. Because we have those, we have them in the virtual world. So the earth expression of the mortal soul is the body.
My daughter got a car. So like I'm washing the car and I'm noticing like, oh, there's a little scratch on the hood. There's the degree that you like take care of a vehicle, you start to notice the blemishes, what happened here? There's a little chip right here. What happened? You got a new car, you got a chip on the door already? What the hell? You start to notice these things. Man, your tires are dirty. Your rims are so dirty. You got to get the undercarriage because of the, all the salt, and you're going through the whole thing, and you're really looking at it with sort of like with a little, what do you call those? Microscope. You're just looking at the details of what's going on with the car. The same as, and we get it's in the forefront of my mind. The body is the same way, to the degree that I'm always thousands of caring for the body and every little detail. It's hard not to always consider this thing to be myself.
Yeah.
It's hard to believe that the self has been something completely different than the Roganov machine for millions of years. It's hard to believe that. All I know is myself to be this thing with these big eyes and this big nose and the little short, a little balding and whatever. I know all the forms this has had in this lifetime, but there's been another eternal self that has had many, many, many forms. But because I'm absorbed in looking in the mirror at this in this lifetime, that's what I'm focusing on. That's what I'm identifying as me. And to the degree that all my investment is in this form, I'm missing out on this other form of myself.
Good point, Rogan. And the three things she's mentioned body, she's mentioned mind, and then she's mentioning the soul. In Sanskrit, the word Atma can be used to refer to all three. Right? It's like saying the self. Like in one sense, the body is the self, but in a very relative sense, right? Like, oh, you hurt me. Like if you hurt my body, I say, oh, you hurt me. That's a conventional way of speaking.
Sure.
Right? But and so in one sense, but not in the deeper sense or the deepest sense. In one sense, the mind is the self, but ultimately it's the soul that's the self, right? And we use the word Atma for all three of those. But the idea is that we need to contemplate, we need to reflect, you need to think about this stuff. You may say, oh, there's no proof for that. Okay, well, think about it. That's the point. We're human beings with the ability to reason and to reflect. You got to think about this, and you got to apply it, and you got to look into nature and really think about this. So she was thinking about that. There's
follow the science, Kostuba.
Well, you see that's the thing.
Hate everybody shouting, follow the science. What if you can't even see it? What if your empiric senses cannot even follow? You don't have the ability to perceive
that's the point. It was like we spoke about this over the weekend, right? Like that old joke about like, someone's down, it's nighttime and they're down on the street, on the sidewalk, and they're underneath the lamppost and they're looking for something. And you go over there and you say, hey, you lost them here? You need some help? Oh yeah, I lost my keys. Oh, you lost them here? No, I lost them over there. Well, why are you looking over here? Well, because the light's better over here. Okay, fine. It's like, that doesn't mean that your keys necessarily have to be within the realm of this, of your ability to see. And it's such you see what scientists sometimes, the people that are representing science sometimes do is they have this thing. It makes no sense. They say, well, that doesn't need to be for an explanation. In other words, take the idea that consciousness is something that's irreducible and made of an entirely different energy than the body.
Okay.
Right? Now, scientists will say, well, there's no reason to accept that needs to be true. Well, you know what? Until you can create consciousness in your laboratory with matter, you have to accept the possibility that it is a possibility, right? You have to accept it as a possibility.
Mm.
You know, don't come to me and say, well, because we have no evidence of that within the realm of our senses, that it is not true. It could exist beyond the realm of your senses, right?
Mm-hmm.
And and it may require reasoning, you know, to understand it. You know, it may require, you know, thinking, you know, about it, you know, and accepting that it may be beyond. So just because the keys of your car, you know, are not underneath the lamppost where you can see, it doesn't mean the keys don't exist. That's the point, right? Now this
Well, you know what? Can I tell you what the great Sadhaputta told me once?
Oh yeah. Who is this?
Sadhaputta was a great scientist, Brahmachari. When I
Bhakti
first
yogi.
met him,
Yeah.
and great devotee. And he was like he was one of these super geniuses. I could barely speak to him. I'm like, slow it down, Maharaj, slow it down. Because I was asking him about the universe according to the Vedas, and there's certain things like, you know, the Vedas concept of cosmology.
Yeah.
It's a lot different.
We'll get to it soon in the 5th canto. It's coming.
Okay, well, it's a little. We got to bring some good scientists on for that.
Mm.
So anyway, with that, I was trying to express like how are we supposed to accept this stuff? And he said, well, imagine you're under a table in your house. What kind of understanding can you have about the sky, about the moon, about the sun? You can't. All you can see is what's under the table. And he said, it's as if we are under a table. And no matter how good your vision is, no matter how big your telescope is, you're just looking under the table. Yet there's a whole world out there. I thought that was a great analogy. What do you think?
Yeah, that works for me. I saw the similar thing on Charlie Rose when he had Bill Maher and this movie director. They had created this film Religulous, right?
Religulous?
Yeah. Bill Maher kind of produced it, but I honestly thought it was really weak. It was basically he was just trying to tear down religion, and he went out and found the most bizarre, kooky religious people. Well, if you really want to try to tear it down, go find the most well-established scholars on it. You know, you know what I'm saying? You know,
sure, there's a bunch of kooky religious people.
Yeah,
I'm one of them. I'm one of them. But you can find some real pundits too, real sadhus.
Yeah. So in any case, on Charlie Rose, they had he and his producer were just there and just speaking really in my mind, just like not very thoughtfully about the topic. You know, if you want to present counter argument, go for it. But
do we have to do everything?
Well, what Charlie Rose did was he showed them a clip of a I forget the name of the scientist, but he's had some, you know, groundbreaking discoveries in the realm of the genome and all this stuff. So he's like a real well-respected scientist, but he's a Christian, and he's, you know, and he believes in God. And he was sitting with Charlie Rose, and he said, you know, if this table, you know how Charlie Rose, they have that table, like that round table.
I've never watched Charlie Rose, my friend. I don't even barely know who. I don't even know what he. If you say, what does Charlie Rose look like? I have no idea.
It's an interview show. It's kind of like the way what's that other podcast? Not that podcast you did.
Rich Roll.
Rich Roll, like where it's kind of like the entire room is dark and there's just a table.
Okay. So
the whole thing was dark and there's this round table, and what this scientist said to Charlie, and it's the simplest thing. He just says, you know, this table represents the realm of our knowledge. Right? Now, there's no reason to accept that God has to lie within that realm. God can lie outside that. Our knowledge is very limited. Science is proving that all the time, just how limited our knowledge is. You know, it's a child can understand this. You know, why couldn't a PhD scientist understand this? You know, It should be simple enough to understand. You can't really disprove the existence of God. In any case, I wanted to read you something.
More good stuff?
Yeah,
hit me.
It's squirreling off a little bit, but while we're on this Ella Wheeler Wilcox person, okay, now she was like, she and her husband, they had this pact. Now, to me, this is a little kooky, but anyway, I appreciate her.
I like kooky.
She and her husband, you know, they had this deep faith in reincarnation and all that, and so they made a pact with each other that whoever dies first will come and communicate with the other one that's still alive.
Oh, let's do that. Let's
I just see how you go right for the kooky stuff.
do that. I'll come back.
So here, but this leads to a really
what if you
interesting
can't?
nugget.
What if you want to, but you can't? Like you
Well-
can't hear me, Mara.
I'm trying to
Knocking
do all this
things
stuff.
over.
So
Okay, go on.
she said Wilcox made efforts to teach and blah blah blah. Is this where it was? Oh, yeah, here it is. Early in their married life, Robert and Ella Wheeler Wilcox promised each other that whoever died first would return and communicate with the other. This is where you need like a prop in here. You know what? You may not be able to do that. It's like, even when you're both alive, you may have trouble communicating with each other. Robert Wilcox died in 1916, and after over 30 years of marriage. She was overcome with grief, which became even more intense as week after week went without a message from him. She's like, why is he not communicating with me?
Yeah.
It was at this time that she went to California to see the Rosicrucian astrologer Max Heindel.
There's a Rosicrucian thing right in Chatham.
We're squirreling already. Let's not double.
Okay,
squirrel.
let me squirrel your squirrel.
No.
There's some Rosicrucians here in Chatham.
Good to know. Now, she's seeking his help in her sorrow, still unable to understand why she had no word from Robert. She wrote of this meeting. So this is interesting, and I thought this was good. This illustrates something that we talk about a lot.
Please tell me, Squirrel Master.
In talking to Max Heindel, the leader of the Rosicrucian philosophy in California, he made very clear to me, she wrote this, he made very clear to me the effect of intense grief. Mr. Heindel assured me that I would come in touch with the spirit of my husband when I learned to control my sorrow. I replied that it seemed strange to me that an omnipotent God could not send a flash of light into a suffering soul to bring its conviction when most needed.
Yeah, what's
Okay,
up with God?
Why can't God send me this thing? Well, you know what? The world may be a little bit more mysterious than that.
Yeah,
Ella.
you know what? God does do crazy stuff too.
Okay,
There is flashes
don't
that
scroll off.
happen.
No, hold on. So this is what he said. He said, did you ever stand beside a clear pool of water, asked Mr. Heindel, and see the trees and the skies reflected therein?
Yes, she said. Yes.
This is what he said to her.
Yeah.
And did you ever cast a stone into that pool and see it clouded and turmoiled, so it gave no reflection? Right? You stand there by a pool of water, you can see the reflection of the trees. Then you throw a stone into the water. Now you can't really make out what it's reflecting anymore, right? You with me, Rugga?
Yeah.
Okay. He said, yet the skies and the trees are waiting above to be reflected when the waters grow calm. So God and your husband's spirit wait to show themselves to you when the turbulence of sorrow is quieted. Now, for me, let's set aside the idea that your husband is going to communicate with you. That's not the important thing here. And this is showing that she hasn't gotten these, even though she's been in her intellectual society and rubbing elbows with Madame Blavatsky and all of this.
Right.
She's still what Prabhupada was talking about in that commentary that we read. She's still attached to that twig and the leaf here. Like, we need to stay together. We you know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah.
And that goes back to that question that we had a couple weeks ago, where we're talking about, and this is what you referred to earlier when we talk about that, we wonder, will I be reunited with my loved ones after death?
Right.
But
It's
from
a much
another
bigger L.
Yeah, it's scary to even go beyond the conventional thought, to go beyond it, because
that breaks our heart. It breaks our heart to think like, no, we're not eternally connected. We seem so close.
And the idea, and even the good news that lies beyond it, right? In other words, that, like, you see, because it's like this, we're in a channel, we're living in a cold world in one sense, right? It's a cold, right? Yeah, it's a cold world. It's like, and if we find a channel of love, if we find a person in this world that's kind to us, that's loving to us, that really truly cares about us, that's so rare and so precious, and we think, oh my God, I can't bear the thought of losing that channel of love, right? But the idea here is that no, actually every living being could be such a channel of love when we elevate to the right level of consciousness, right? Then you won't be so desperate for this one channel,
Mm-hmm.
And so here, Ella Wilcox, or whatever, Ella Wheeler Wilcox, she's definitely mingling with these spiritual ideas, and she's onto something, but she hasn't gotten the instructions clear enough. So she's still desperate to hear from her deceased husband. She hasn't learned detachment. She's still kind of, in this illusion that this one particular relationship is far more important than any other relationship. So, but that being said, I think what's illustrated through what this Rosicrucian, Max Heindel, said here is really important. Let's set aside the idea of communicating with a lost loved one and just keep it on the level of understanding what lies beyond the realm of our senses, or understanding even just that, right? This world is a reflection, like she said in her poem, affirm the body, beautiful and whole, the earth expression of the immortal soul, right? Within this earth, there are forms and there are relations. These are reflections of the spiritual realm. And when our mind becomes calm, we see those reflections. We see exactly what's being reflected. And when we look at nature, we understand the spiritual realm. Right? But when our mind is disturbed, particularly disturbed by all kinds of desires and all kinds of pettiness and, attachments, I'm disturbed that this person said that, and I'm upset that I don't have this, and I know I need to get that to be happy, and my God, I got to get out of this situation. When our mind is disturbed like that, we're right in the middle of all of this information about life, and we're not picking up any of it, because it's like the water that's been disturbed by the ripples of the stone. I thought that was some good stuff.
It was great stuff, Mr. Squirrel.
All right.
Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narotamam devim saraswatim vyasam tadojayam mudirayat. Before we start in the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances to the Supreme Lord Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayeshu badreshu nityam bhagavat sevaya bhagavati uttama shloki bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering service to the pure devotees, all that is troublesome to the heart will become eradicated, and loving service to the Supreme Lord, who is praised with transcendental songs, will be established as an irrevocable fact. Om Jnana Tamarandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chaksurun Midatam Nena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance. My teachers are opening my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my obeisances at their lotus feet. Reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 10. I think we're in text 9.
Yeah, we had the cliffhanger yesterday, right? It was like he was about to
just
speak.
getting chastised. He was getting
chastised sarcastically.
Yeah, by the king. And now Jada Bharata's about to speak. He's about to correct the king. What? The servant's about to correct the master.
Okay. So this first in text 9 is going to reply to two things that the king had said. In his sarcasm, the king said, "Oh, you must be so tired." It's like they just got started, right? And the king said, "Oh, you must be so tired. We've been going so long, right? You must be tired. That's why you're carrying the palanquin so
haphazardly.
Haphazardly. And then he said also, "Oh, you appeared like an old, weak person." He was like this young, really strong guy. "Oh, you appear like such a, So he was, so now text 9 and 10 are going to respond to those two sarcastic comments.
So Jada Bharata said, "My dear king and hero, whatever you have spoken sarcastically is certainly true." Right? He's not trying to fight it. Like, How dare you say that? Let me tell you what I think about you. No, he's like, whatever you would have spoken sarcastically is certainly true. Actually, these are not simply words of chastisement, for the body is the carrier. The load carried by the body does not belong to me, for I am a spirit soul. Boom, you get right to the essence.
So in other words, you're saying I shouldn't be tired. He's saying the fact is I'm not tired. The soul is never tired. Right? Okay.
There is no contradiction in your statements because I am different from the body. I'm not This is pretty amazing. This is the first time this guy has ever spoken.
I know. He's
You know what I
dropping the
mean?
knowledge.
And this is what's
Yeah.
coming out of his mouth.
Yeah.
I'm not the carrier of the palanquin. The body is the carrier. Certainly, as you have hinted, I've not labored carrying the palanquin, for I'm detached from the body.
Yeah. I'm not carrying the palanquin. My body is. I'm not tired. My body might get tired.
Yeah. You have said that I am not stout and strong. And these words are befitting a person who does not know the distinction between the body and the soul. The body may be fat or thin, but no learned man would say such things of the spirit soul.
Yeah.
As far as the spirit soul is concerned, I am neither fat nor skinny. Therefore, you are correct when you say that I am not very stout. Also, if the object of this journey and the path leading there were mine, there would be many troubles for me. But because they relate not to me, but to my body, there is no trouble at all.
This is the kind of reflective thinking that we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
That we can pass through life. Prabhupada says this in the commentary to text 9. Think about this, Raga, okay?
Ready?
He says the practice of austerity and penance. Now, yogis do this, right? They practice austerities, they practice penance. Wake up early in the morning, sit quietly, control their diet, do in different ways. The practice of austerity and penance is meant for understanding the distinction between the body and the soul, and how the soul can be unaffected by the pleasures and pains of the body. Just boom. Okay, in other words, if I practice a little austerity in life, which is necessary for spiritual, if any of these spiritual so-called gurus come along and tell you that like austerity is like,
oh no.
No, just say yes to everything, and then you will naturally become detached. No, it
You
doesn't
must
work
give
that way.
in to your senses.
The
Give
divine
in to
yes.
them. And then
Yeah,
eventually you'll be disgusted with them. But first give in.
So
No need to repress.
So the practice of austerity and penance it's like thought experimentation, like fasting. Like if I'm not going to eat today, my body's going to start to call for me to eat, right? And at that point, I can reflect upon the distinction between my body and myself. And I said, my body is calling for something, but I don't need to answer that call. In this way, we begin to contemplate and deeper realize the distinction between the self and the body, right? And we learn how we can be unaffected by the pleasures and the pains of the body. Jada Bharata had that deep to the core. When he was speaking it, with absolute conviction, right? And it's going to blow the mind of the king.
Okay.
But that's the point. We're, as a human being, we're meant to perform these thought experiments. Practice a little austerity in life. Okay.
Right. Text 10. Fatness, thinness, bodily and mental distress, thirst, hunger, fear, disagreement, desires for material happiness, old age, sleep, attachment for material possessions, anger, lamentation, illusion, identification of the body with the self are all transformations of the material covering of the spirit soul. This is Judbar continuing on with the wisdom bomb here.
Yeah,
A person.
What text was that? Did you finish the text?
10. Text 10.
Did you finish it?
No.
Okay, still in it. Okay.
A person absorbed in the material bodily conception is affected by these things, but I am free from all bodily conceptions. Consequently, I am neither fat nor skinny nor anything else you have mentioned.
Boom.
Yeah. You feel like you're fat. You're not. You're not even this body.
Yeah.
You feel like you're white. You feel like you're black. You feel like you're skinny. You feel like you're ripped. You're not ripped.
Okay. I want to let you know that.
You think you're ripped? You're not ripped. It's got nothing to do with you. You're renting a car for a few days. You're going to return it.
Yeah. So he's mentioning all these transformations, fat, thin. You can be fat one day, you can be thin, later, bodily, mental distress. You're distressed one moment, you're happy the next, thirst, hunger, fear, disagreement, even things like old age, happiness, sleep, all these different things. Am I asleep? Well, my body's sleeping, right?
Right.
So the point here is that the transformations of the material coverings of the spirit soul, they affect only those who identify with that covering.
Hmm.
And it's possible to be within a body and not identifying with it and to become free from becoming a victim to these transformations. You know? Now, Prabhupada says this is interesting, right? In the commentary. He says, when one comes to understand that they are not the body and therefore neither fat nor skinny, one attains the topmost form of spiritual realization. When one is not spiritually realized, the bodily conception entangles one in the material world. Right? It's just like now we live in a bizarro world. I was thinking about this, right?
Do we?
Yeah, we do. It's kind of like, you know, if you go back 200 years, you know, like for instance, even like we say with sexuality, right?
Yeah.
People seek happiness through it. Through physical intimacy. And if you grew up in some country town or village or even a city,
You grew up with my mom in Brooklyn.
yeah, no, but let's say before then, before there was television, before there was even photography and all of that.
There's no television when my mom grew up.
Yeah,
But you're saying before photography too. I think they had
but
photography.
imagine, you know, like what it was before even photography. That like the attraction between two people, it was so much simpler and everything. Like all of these crazy, what do they call it? Like these standards of beauty and so on.
Sure.
They like the most beautiful person in your town was like the biggest, you know what I'm saying? It was like, it wasn't like these, but now a guy's looking for physical intimacy. He's looking at the movie star. He's looking at the porn star. He's looking at he's looking at all these different,
Right.
and
we've been trained.
saying,
What is it? You're saying we've been trained to think what is attractive and what's
this is what I need to be happy. And you don't have it. Right. It's like, and everybody's looking at each, and everybody's like in such a, they're running to the gyms and working out like crazy. They're getting plastic surgery. They're doing all these different things.
We're getting machines put on our belly that zap us to get rid of belly fat.
And they must not work, right?
They don't. It's ridiculous how like belly fat is like an obsession. Anything I go into YouTube, it's always like, what have I searched for belly fat? Because there's thousands of commercials I get for belly fat reduction.
Okay. So and then everybody's getting mental. Just things like that, right? It's probably that it's, you know, technically, I'm not saying that this happened, but the technology is getting there. We're like the technology can look at your form on the computer and then start sending you things that make you
wait a second. You're saying I do have belly fat?
I'm just saying. Maybe.
I'm not saying it, the computer's saying it.
Yeah. But and so then because we don't have this spiritual knowledge, we suffer so intensely. And then we play these games that don't work. Like we tell each other, oh, you're overweight, but that's beautiful too. You are beautiful. Rather than telling someone you're not that body and you have a value that's way beyond that body, and get in touch with that. Right?
Because your self-love for your body and your self-hatred for your body are different sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
I'm so hot and I am gross is the same thing.
And both will bring you suffering.
One of them.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah. Rather than saying, I'm suffering because I don't look like that beautiful movie star. I don't look like that porn star. I don't carry myself like this. Yeah. And you're feeling a sense of insecurity based on it and constant intense suffering.
And you keep that as your identity. Like I'm looking good. I'm looking good. The inevitable time where that identity gets broken down. I mean, and sometimes people happen. They have these great bodies. They get into some accident and they just can't work out anymore. They get some accident. They go through some season of their life where they just don't have the strength to do something. They get a chronic disease and then their body changes and there's an extra depression in their consciousness because they've invested themselves as that body or as that super fit being. And they think, what has happened to me? It's not you. It's not you. You're something so much greater than your tummy, than your pecs, than your bicep, than your butt. We don't care about your butt here.
Okay. We do care, but not like that way.
We don't care.
So in any case, you know, and I get it. It's out of compassion that these things are rising where we're saying, hey, you are beautiful, even if you're like this or you're like that. But it doesn't work, and it warps into all these bizarre things like, if you're not attracted to me even though I'm obese, then you're a bigot, and all the, it's just like the whole thing gets absurd.
Yes, yeah, you're a bigot.
You know,
throw that one around a lot.
But the but the answer is, we were all passing through many different bodies. You know, some of them are going to. We've all passed through the attractive body and the unattractive body. You know, we're not these bodies. You know, try to understand that, and you will understand that that the spiritual happiness that lies within you is so far beyond this petty, ridiculous kind of nonsense that we're caught up in.
I mean, I do understand those people who actually say, as bizarre as that sounds, if you're not attracted to my obese body, then you're bigot. I do get that, but we're all bigoted in certain ways. We have desires, we have passions, we have things that we like. We like them thin or thick, or, you know, tall or short. We like that, but what they are, they're speaking on a higher platform. But you can't accuse me for being on a lower platform if you two are on that lower platform.
That lower platform.
We're all on the lower platform. We're seeing with the material senses. So we're saying, join this party. Transcend the vision. You can't just yell, how dare you think you're the body, Kostuba? You are such a hypocrite. You're a racist. You're a phobic of everything in this world. No, you're just conditioned. Join our party. We're trying to get over it. We're trying to get over the body as the self and see each other with greater dignity underneath this big meat puppet.
There you go. This is how Prabhupada wraps up the commentary to that text 10. And maybe we can end with this, because I think we're over time.
I come after this show and I look at Mary, I go, I sweat profusely during this show.
Easy.
I feel like change my clothes after the show.
Easier. Okay. Now here's how Prabhupada wrapped it up. He said, the more we advance our freedom from the bodily conception, the more we are fixed in bhakti and devotional service, and the more we are happy and peaceful. In this regard, Srila Madhvacharya, one of the great bhakti teachers from 800 years ago, in this regard, Srila Madhvacharya says that those who are too materially affected continue the bodily conception. Such persons are concerned with different bodily symptoms, fat, thin, this, that, right? Whereas one freed from bodily conceptions lives without the body, even in the material condition.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I can be operating in a conventional world in a conventional way in this body, but I can be in my consciousness and where I suffer and enjoy. I can be beyond it. I can be free from the suffering connected to it, because in one sense, I'm disconnected from it. I see it as a blip in time. I pass through it without the same kind of suffering as someone who's fully invested in it and desperately trying to find a way that they can enjoy through it. You know, it's hopeless. Just let it go.
The problem is we're living in this material world, but I'm a material girl. You know, we're identifying ourselves with the body. I'm trying to throw.
Yeah, I didn't.
Madonna. That was Madonna. Okay, Mara, takeaways, please. Look at me and Mara. We got these beautiful shades of green today. This was not planned. This was not planned. This is a Krishna miracle in itself. And look what she's doing. She's knitting a little green shutter for my deities.
Absolutely fascinating, Margaret.
I don't think Kostuba's fascinating.
Thank you.
It takes a lot to make this guy say that's a Krishna miracle.
All right. The ant's soul is important.
Oh yeah, that's the ant soul is important too.
Bring it back.
Children break your attachment and the knot in the heart.
Rip it.
Or they just break you. They break you or the knot in the heart.
We're all floating on the waves of the ocean of nescience.
Yeah. Can't believe you didn't sing a song, but continue, man.
Ocean of nescience.
Shri Krishna is our true soulmate.
There you go. That's a great one. You want a soulmate? I got one for you. He's got ankle bells and a peacock feather in his hair. Looking for a soulmate? We can help. Join us, Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast.
Thank you. Affirm the eternal I.
Oh yeah, the eternal I.
Affirm the eternal I.
Like that.
Invest in the driver, not just the vehicle.
Okay.
Okay, Madam Blavatsky. You're my Madam Blavatsky, Mara.
Madam Mara.
The soul is never tired.
I think we need to repackage Mara in a particular way. Let's start calling her Madam Mara.
Madam Mayor. Why not?
Yeah, just
Madam-
like
I mean, it's what I always say. It's like, who writes your bio? You can be whatever you call yourself to be.
Madam Mara.
Read
Is there
Madame
more?
Blavatsky's bio. It's like, she's a mystic. Like, who says?
And how did she get the Madam in front of it? Like,
Yeah,
why isn't she just like
why aren't you
Stella
Madame Mara?
Blavatsky? That's what I'm saying. Okay.
Why isn't she Miss Blavatsky?
Back to our takeaways. Austerity and penance are meant for seeing the distinctions between body and soul.
Austerity and penance.
That's right. Thought experimentations.
Lady Mara. That's a good one too.
Lady Mara. You're not ripped. You're not this body.
You're not ripped.
I just like you're not ripped. You're
You're not ripped. And
And
we're not interested in your butt.
yeah, we're not interested in your butt.
Just a little.
Just kidding. I'm not. Oh, Krishna. My material side is very interested in your butt. My spiritual side couldn't care less. It's a butt. Thanks everybody for joining us. This is what we do in the morning. We discuss the Srimad Bhagavatam. We try to make it applicable to life because, it's 2023 and we're just trying to figure out life and how to escape the illusions, the pitfalls, the glue traps, and the sinkholes of the material universe. Thanks for joining us. This community is making me stronger. Wisdom of Sages community is so powerful, so wonderful. We get so many great emails. There's people having secret sage meetings without our even knowing. I always run into people and they're like, oh yeah, we're having a meeting. I was like, what meeting?
Yeah.
Like, it's just a little breakaway meeting we created. I was like, breakaway meeting?
Who gave you permission for
Why
that?
isn't anyone inviting me to a breakaway meeting? Come on!
Ella's got a breakaway sage group meeting.
Huh?
Ella's got a Israeli breakaway
There's
group.
an Israeli breakaway meeting?
Mhm.
Oh.